She quickly stretched out her hand, and a huge mirror appeared in front of her. In an instant, she saw in the mirror a long, straight black Lolita wearing a black swan skirt and bright lipstick. Her mind went blank, and she took a few steps back in a dull manner. She remembered that this was a formal dress she wore before the promotion ceremony even longer ago, when she was only a 12 or 13-year-old Miko. This reappearance did not recreate her grand occasion 4,500 years ago at all, but rather reappeared even longer ago. A sharp and frustrated cry. Ding! You have triggered a special achievement. Everything can be transformed, and you have gained 200 basic experience. Whether intentional or not, this is enough to show that the host has a very healthy psychology. You have obtained permanent bonuses: shooting speed +5, physical strength +5, endurance +3, defense breaking rate +5. Xia Xiao clasped her hands together in great surprise, her eyes sparkling, and said in surprise, "Mom, you have become so young. So cool." Her eyes flashed with surprises, and then she rushed over quickly, immediately hugged her waist. "Mom, you are so soft." Then her eyes instantly fell on the sluggish Lin who was placed on Xia Xiao's head. Her eyes instantly exploded with anger. This guy has turned into a little lowly. Hateful. Damn it. Do you want to die? Snap. Lin was instantly grabbed by that slender hand like a mouse. The witch god looked at him angrily, gritted his teeth and said, "Didn't I tell you? I want you to reappear me 4,500 years ago. Didn't you hear clearly? It's 4,500 years ago, not 7,500 years ago." Explanation. I need an explanation. The witch god shouted. "Auntie, please be patient. There are indeed some technical problems. I didn't expend too much mental energy at that time, but the load and pressure you put on me, Aunt, were dozens of times that of Zio. So there may have been some confusion when positioning the time. Maybe. She has indeed become a little younger. Is this just a little bit? I have lost the proud figure that I have developed for more than 3,000 years. Auntie, this is wrong. It is impossible for normal people to develop at this age. And since it is a reappearance of the past, shouldn't Auntie experience the joy of youth more happily? I think you did it on purpose. You bastard. I have long seen that you are not a normal person. No wonder you would approach my daughter, you despicable person. Shameless and obscene lowly manipulator. You are so good at this. You are finished." Lin was shocked. He immediately felt that he had been hugely insulted. It was obviously just a small accident, but he was put on the line all at once. "Auntie, you can take medicine randomly, but you can't talk nonsense. I have always been a very serious person. If I am really a nasty lolicon, then why don't I just pick a time when you are taking a shower to reproduce you? Wouldn't that be more exciting than now?" As soon as Lin finished speaking, he immediately realized that he had made a mistake. Although in front of him was a harmless-looking heavy-duty Lolita, she was still essentially a little mother, the terrifying head of the witch god. "You try if you dare. Give it a try." Powerful mocking voice instantly came from the distance behind her. "Dad, are you awake?" Xia Xiao hugged Lin and ran over in surprise. Titan's head looked at the witch god with a ferocious sneer and said, "Yes, after hearing the noise, I woke up quickly. Come here and prepare to laugh at her." Then under the dull gazes of Lin and Xiao, the Titan's head sneered around the head of the witch god that had turned into a little Lolita, going back and forth. The Titan sneered like a connoisseur and said, "Tisk, tisk, isn't this the famous witch? I haven't seen you for a few minutes, and you are like this. So, this was you during your, not even fully grown, time. You're so short, even among our Titan race, you're this short. Oh, at that time, you already knew how to apply lipstick. Quite skilled. Did you also learn to wear black silk stockings? Very avant-garde. I thought you were the kind of wicked witch from your childhood to adulthood. Turns out, you had such a silly and cute phase." The Titan's skull extended a tentacle, adjusting the large rabbit ear headpiece on her head. The famous witch wearing such a headpiece. Ha. The Titan's skull began mocking shamelessly, laughing loudly, clearly in a good mood and very pleased with himself. "You think you're a bunny girl." The Titan's skull laughed even louder. The god of witchcraft gritted her teeth, clenching her fists, her face turning bright red. In an instant, the god of witchcraft raised her head in anger, almost tearing him apart with her gaze. However, due to her extremely young appearance, even if she glared angrily, it was hard to convey a threatening feeling. "A brute with muscles in his head. You can handle sophisticated magic. Stop boasting. Besides, with your size, even if you wanted to hypnotize yourself, it's impossible." The Titan's skull sneered. "Who says I'm going to use self-hypnosis?" The god of witchcraft raised an eyebrow, and in the next moment, to the shock of Lin and Little, two tentacles shot out instantly, directly lifting the nearby small mountain. Swoosh. Lin and Little suddenly looked up, staring at the small mountain thrown into the air. Because of the incredible speed, the small mountain turned into a bright spot almost instantly. Ding! The light point disappeared. It's gone, Lin exclaimed. Threw it so high. Little marveled. The real Titan never uses those flashy things. I've lowered my defense to the minimum. Can you compare to me? Can you? Boom. A huge roar. In front of Lin and Little's astonished eyes, the small mountain thrown into the sky slammed onto the Titan's skull amid his mocking laughter. Rolling dust dispersed. The Titan's skull lay on the ground, its long tongue hanging out, viscous brain fluid bubbling out, and all the surrounding tentacles twitching. Your dad isn't dead yet, daughter, why are you crying? The god of witchcraft crossed her chest, temples twitching. Little wiped away tears and said, Doctor, brother cried, so Little cried too. Crying once earns me 50 coins. The god of witchcraft closed her eyes, clenching her fists. This won't do. She felt that if she continued to let her daughter and this guy be together, her once dignified daughter would eventually become abnormal. Does this person even know the difference between himself and normal people? Stop crying for now. The god of witchcraft opened her eyes, twitching. He went through so much trouble to knock himself out. Can you see if you can revive him? Lin wiped away the tears from the corner of his eyes, thought for a moment, and sensed the balance of his mental power. Then he pondered, my mental power has bottomed out. Even if we exclude other interference factors, with my current mental power, I don't have 100% certainty. The god of witchcraft sneered, this is easy. If you lack mental power, I can give it to you. You can use it to revive him. Can it really be done? Lin remained calm. Immediately, Lin figured out another way to use past memories. If normal methods didn't work, as long as there was an opportunity to knock the opponent unconscious, would he then be free to do as he pleased? Unmentionable images suddenly flashed in Lin's mind, but he quickly dispelled those wicked thoughts, and his expression returned to stability. Since that's the case, initiate. In an instant, a dazzling light, influenced by Lin, surged around the Titan's skull. Just as Lin felt his remaining mental power rapidly depleting, a majestic, somewhat chaotic spiritual power was infused into his brain, rapidly replenishing his consumption. Don't move. Continue the reproduction, came the faint voice of the god from behind. Clearly, the small goddess provided him with tremendous support in terms of spiritual power. With this backing, Lin had no worries. He closed his eyes and precisely located the time point that needed to be reproduced. After some time passed, Lin accurately positioned the time 3001 years ago. Perfect. Lin smiled slightly, but just as he was about to withdraw his spiritual power to complete this nostalgic reproduction, the god's voice suddenly sounded mysteriously in his mind. Go further. Lin was surprised, but it's already 3000 years ago. Add another 0. A brief silence. What does adding another 0 mean? Lin was shocked, asking rapidly in his mind. The god squinted and said, no big deal. This old guy just mocked me a while ago. Do you think I can swallow that? Continue taking him forward. If he dares to trouble you, I've got you covered. Lin said, but if we add another 0, won't everything be gone? The god sneered, don't underestimate him. Although he's useless now, he was the war god of the Titan clan back then, hailed as the strongest Titan. He has lived for years, far beyond what you can imagine. Lin exclaimed, are you sure? Are you sure nothing will happen? The god narrowed his eyes, stop talking nonsense. I already said I've got you covered. Things had come this far. Might as well. Lin gritted his teeth. Continuing to manipulate his spiritual power, he continued to locate more distant time periods. The continuous influx of powerful spiritual energy from behind almost reduced his consumption to negligible levels. Finally, the time point was fixed at 30,010 years ago. Now it should be enough, right? Well, add another 5,000 years, give him a super double dose. After a few more minutes, Lin said, what about now? The god pondered, since we've added this much, it doesn't matter. Add another 2,000 years. Consider it a gift for him. Keep going forward. Pull him to the end, then I'll make some fine adjustments. Finally, after a total pull of 50,005 years, it was finally over. No more going forward, because that was already the starting point of life. Going forward would require separate calculations. The god pondered, is this a bit too much? Of course it's too much. We've already pulled to the end. It would be a miracle if things turn out good. The god thought about it and seemed to agree that it was a bit excessive. A few minutes later, with a dazzling burst of light and a roar, the lengthy reproduction, lasting for over 10 minutes, finally came to an end. The Titan's head, gradually recovering from unconsciousness, immediately felt the changes in his body. Although the curse and power remained unchanged, the completely different sensations on his body made him instantly tremble with excitement. His consciousness became urgent. Finally, after 3,000 years of death, could he once again stand upon the earth in his peak appearance, the magnificent Titan giant, the defender of the earth, the terror of the sky. With 2 giant axes that split the heavens, he boldly broke through the dust of his memories, revealing flashes in his consciousness. He slowly became excited and enthusiastic. Finally, could he recreate the bygone years. In the next moment, the light slowly dissipated from his body, and in front of him, there appeared a vague figure of his young wife and daughter, and that human who sat on his daughter's head, covering his face and looking extremely awkward. He immediately wanted to open his strong and powerful arms to give them a big hug. He wanted to tell them, "Your strong husband and father, he's back. He's back." The emotion was truly moving. But just as he was about to open his arms, he froze for a moment, then suddenly realized something was wrong. Where were his arms? His powerful arms. Something was wrong. It seemed a bit off. Then he saw that he seemed much smaller than before. Even in front of his daughter and the crazy woman, he had to tilt his head up to see. Even compared to that human, he seemed a bit diminutive. But wasn't he supposed to be reproduced in his appearance from 3,000 years ago? Finally, he subconsciously looked at himself. On the ground, a fertilized egg the size of a soccer ball emitted a strange and terrified sound. Lin slapped his forehead with a snap, closed his eyes, and his face contorted in pain, with the corners of his mouth twitching madly. Damn it, the scene was too intense, he really couldn't bear to look. This is outrageous. It's truly outrageous. Uncle, please don't blame me. I'm just a tool, manipulated by that little devil. I have absolutely no connection with all this. I am still kind. Suddenly, a system prompt sounded in his ear. Ding, you triggered a special achievement, the beginning of life. You gained basic experience 200. The beginning of life special achievement, obtained when successfully using the past remembrance skill to recreate the target as the beginning of life. This indicates that you are a compassionate person, willing to let others experience the birth of life and its hardships. You gained a permanent bonus, Constitution +2, Endurance +2, Compassion +1. She grabbed the fertilized egg, about the size of a soccer ball, and chuckled while covering her forehead. Oh, isn't this the famous Titan god from years ago? Disappeared for a few minutes, and this is what happened. Squeak, squeak. The fertilized egg roared in anger. The witch god sighed, "It's unnecessary, really unnecessary. I know you want to go back in time, but there's really no need to make yourself this young." The Titan fertilized egg angrily jumped up, finally unable to resist, and knocked her down to the ground in one fell swoop. "You useless waste. You dared to mock me before, but back then, you used to come running after me every day, pursuing me. Otherwise, did you think I would marry an old guy like you who's tens of thousands of years old?" Squeak, squeak. The two clashed violently, shaking the entire earth. Meanwhile, watching this scene from the side, Little chuckled and instantly waved her delicate arms. "Dad, go for it. Mom, go for it." Little, did something remind you of the past? The evening breeze blew. She looked particularly peaceful, serene, and beautiful. Yes, unknowingly, she raised her head, opened her eyes, and looked at the dark sky. Her eyes filled with hope. Mom and Dad used to fight like this often, just like they are now. Once they fought so fiercely that even the house collapsed. Little was scared and hid under the bed, crying all night. She smiled, rubbing her moist eyes. "I thought Mom and Dad would never talk to each other again. Maybe they wouldn't even be together. So I was scared the whole night." But the next day, she hoped, hugging her legs and looking at the sky. They acted like nothing had happened, happily applying ointment to each other in the living room, treating wounds and saying intimate things. Their smiles, as if the quarrel from last night had never happened. She turned her head, smiling at Lin like an elf. "Later, I found out that it was just their way of getting along. They loved each other deeply, but when they encountered conflicts, they would fiercely beat each other up." Lin was speechless. Strange way of getting along. Well, maybe this is their unique way of getting along. But Little is really happy. Do you, Doctor, not see it? In fact, Dad and Mom no longer harbor any malice towards you. Lin was stunned. He looked at Little's parents who were fighting in the distance. Slowly, he somewhat understood what Little meant. Yes, no matter who it is, even a demon from hell, there must have been something beautiful they once stood for. The hands of the big and the small gently touched. One big, one small, but unexpectedly harmonious. As if everything was silently speaking, the mark on their foreheads revealed the gradually approaching understanding. I might forget. I might never be able to become a normal girl. But, thank you, my doctor. Countless light points slowly emerged from Little's body, her face still adorned with a beautiful smile with teary eyes. Her golden hair gradually feathered, and her delicate face and body slowly became ethereal. A sudden burst of light made Lin instinctively close his eyes, and when he opened them again, the hand in front of him had disappeared, as if everything just now was an illusion. Lin stared blankly. Inside, suddenly, for some reason, it felt empty. He closed his eyes and said nothing. It wasn't until he felt a strange touch on his hand, opened his eyes again, and saw that the hand was gently reaching over, softly touching his hand. He saw Little's familiar face on the other side. Doctor, and back to normal. Yeah, back to normal. A sincere smile appeared on Lin's face. Can you change back anytime? With me here anytime you want. I promise. That's great. If you change back, you must become Little's dentist. Of course, I definitely will. Well, that's it. Perhaps my life is destined to deal with creatures from hell. If so, then, it's not necessarily a bad thing. A faint curve appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he gently held the tentacle that Little stretched out, as if accepting something. The black mist surged, and the sky remained pitch black. Unconsciously, it seemed to hear a system prompt in his ear, but it quickly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Your recovery +1. A whole hour passed. With the fading of past years, the brief reappearance of the heads of the god and titan, they eventually returned to their original forms one after another. It was like a dream, as if they had never fallen into hell, as if they were still living in the world they had always known, unchanging. Back to normal, the head of the god fell silent, an unusual occurrence. The two stopped their bickering and returned to reality. It really makes one nostalgic. The head of the god raised its head, showing a hint of a normal smile. Then its gaze fell on Lin. With the movement of the massive head, she once again stood in front of Lin like a mountain. She looked down at Lin for a long time. She grinned, revealing a sinister set of teeth, and said, although I still don't like you very much, it seems I don't dislike you as much. Heh. Lin felt his scalp tingle from her laughter. Lin breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled, extending his hand and giving the godhead a thumbs up. Clearly, after this incident, he had successfully gained the approval of Small's mother. At least, it was no longer like before, where he was treated as a toy Small liked. As for the attitude of the Titan head, well, although there seemed to be no change, it was clear that the intense anger and murderous intent from before were no longer present. Uncle, is there something you need? Lin stared in shock. For Small's father, this immensely powerful ancestral being, it was definitely not false to say that he felt uneasy, because the Titan head's dislike for him was even greater than the god head's. The Titan head raised its tentacle and said, come with me. We need to talk privately. Private talk again. Lin already had a psychological shadow about the phrase private talk. Lin blinked and said, can't we talk here? The Titan head gave him a look that said, it's either talk here or die. Lin immediately nodded and said seriously, all right. Uncle, we can talk however you like. Even if it's talking until we bleed, it's not a problem. A few minutes later, Lin felt nervous and had a strange feeling, as if he had followed his girlfriend home and was being interrogated by the father in a dark room. But what kind of joke was this? The relationship between him and Small was clearly very pure. Do you know what I hate the most in my life? It's those bastards who dare to kidnap my young daughter. Usually, when I encounter such people, I just crush them directly. The Titan head indifferently licked its strong and ferocious tentacle to show off. Lin was sweating profusely, saying, Uncle, you've misunderstood. There really isn't anything between Small and me. We're just ordinary good friends. And think about it, how could I, from such a small race, possibly kidnap Small, such a powerful giant? Size doesn't match at all, is that so? But for some real bastards, they can always come up with various tricks to make their sizes match. Lin stammered, oh, I don't quite understand. The Titan head continued, you don't need to pretend in front of me. I can clearly see that you have the ability to control your body, right? Use your ability a bit, adjust your to the appropriate size. The issue of size is easily solved, isn't it? At this moment, Lin's mind and body suffered a tremendous shock. At this moment, he didn't even know how to respond to this sentence. This is not right. Something is wrong. Are you threatening me, or are you teaching me hands-on? This idea is too dangerous. The Titan head turned coldly, interrupting him and indifferently looking down, saying, you still want to pretend. If I'm not mistaken, you should have already found out my daughter's preferences. You probably also know that. My daughter likes shiny things the most, enjoys being treated to a big meal, likes someone giving her a bubble bath, enjoys going out for a stroll and adventures with someone. He maliciously chuckled. Likes being cuddled to sleep at night. You scoundrel. Lin stood there hollow, muttering. Before, he didn't know, but now it seemed like he knew everything. Uncle, are you really sure this isn't hands-on teaching? But even if you know these things, trying to kidnap my daughter is impossible. As long as I'm conscious for even a moment, I won't let my daughter out of my sight. Lin hollowly said, "That's really good." The Titan head squinted its eyes, indifferent, and said, "Unless you can figure out the chaos in my patterns. But you surely don't know, I only get chaotic on odd days, intermittently clear on even days, and only on the last day of the week do I give my daughter a day off. Only on that day will I let her go out alone without someone accompanying her. And I sleep very soundly. Even if she brings back something, sleeping me wouldn't hear it." "But you definitely don't know these things, right?" Lin said. Yes. All right. The Titan head indifferently said, "What needs to be said has already been said. I originally wanted to eat you now, but my dental health hasn't been good lately. Seeing you easily satisfies my hunger, so I might consider not eating you for now. But don't think about quitting halfway." The Titan head squinted its eyes, revealing a threatening and terrifying set of teeth. Those huge, razor-sharp teeth glimmered with a terrifying light, as if saying, "If you dare to back out, I can chew you up like a dessert at any time." "Understood. Thank you for the guidance, uncle. This is forcing someone into prostitution through coercion. But I really just treat Small as a good customer, a good friend, nothing more." After a while, the Titan head resumed its indifferent expression, standing with its tentacles, saying indifferently, "That's enough about my daughter. But you probably have many things you want to ask me. If I'm in a good mood, I might give you a chance. You seem to not be the original inhabitants of this world. So, who are you?" Lin hesitated. This was indeed a doubt that had been in his mind since he encountered this whole family. Because in the system introduction, they seemed to have fallen from a higher world to this dark world. And the Titans, in various legends on Earth, they were a very powerful race, almost godlike. The Titan head raised its head indifferently, saying, "Of course, we are not the original inhabitants of this world. I think you should already know. We are Titan giants. We are a supreme race that can rival gods." Lin trembled. The Titan head continued indifferently, "And your world, what we call the Dead Realm, is a dark world abandoned by the gods. Curses, chaos, misfortune, resentment, all the garbage and the deceased who shouldn't exist in reality are dragged into this world, never to be reborn. Of course, aside from that trash, there are also many self-proclaimed sacred organizations that will more or less interfere with this world, even sending troops to battle the monsters in this world." It glanced at Lin. "And there are also many innocent ones like you who accidentally fell into this world for various reasons." Lin contemplated. For a long time, he earnestly raised his head, saying seriously, "How can I leave this place? Return to my original world?" Hearing this, a sinister smile appeared on the Titan head's face, as if it had heard the world's biggest joke. His tone began to subtly become chaotic. "Leaving. Yes, you can leave, because you are the living. But wanting to return to your original world is not that simple. There are countless stars in the sky. And you, without a beacon, how can you find your world among countless starlights?" Lin looked at him seriously. His hands slowly clenched. "It seems you really want to go home." The Titan head maliciously smiled, saying, "Yes, who doesn't want to go home? Who wants to stay in this malicious world?" He grinned, raising his eyes with malice, full of mockery and chaotic gaze, staring at the pitch-black night. 3,000 years, I've been cursed and suppressed here, 3,000 years. Hatred, anger, my fury never burns out. The more I think of the past, the curses torment me, but the more they torment me, the more unwilling I become." He suddenly laughed maniacally and maliciously. A large number of viscous, black tentacles spread out from his eye sockets, nose, ears, and mouth. And on each tentacle, a burning black flame ignited with a crackling sound. Lin was shocked and immediately raised his head, saying, "Uncle, ha, I want to go back to my world, burning them all, devouring them all." Chaos and anger began to burn in the Titan head's eyes. Those burning tentacles, like viscous burning streams, spread unscrupulously across the wilderness. System prompts kept urgently sounding in his ears. Apparently, the previous conversation made the Titan head recall past calamities. "I don't want to be trapped here, become this monster, suffer, let my wife, my daughter, suffer." In an instant, he raised his head with a sinister expression, glaring at the pitch-black sky. "Heaven, you can't suppress me, you can't bind me. Someday, I will return from this hell, burning you all." A chaotic roar. Under Lin's gaze, the Titan head, with its vast burning tentacles, leaped towards the pitch-black sky. The huge head burned with raging anger, like a spear tearing through the sky, vowing to obliterate all the darkness that dared to bind him. Lin stared in amazement at that head, watching it turn into a fireball, rushing towards the pitch-black sky in a destructive manner. But it was almost at the moment when that figure was about to disappear from view. Whoosh! Lin suddenly saw. Countless black chains burst out from all directions on the dark ground, piercing straight towards the sky. Each chain was dozens of meters thick but almost transparent like nothingness. It was as if his leap had triggered some cold curse. Almost in an instant, that father who had just leaped to break through the night was immediately bound by those chains from the boundless heights. Boom! The massive head heavily fell to the ground, creating a burning crater. Those chains, like snakes, mercilessly lashed onto his head, leaving one after another ash-like scars on his head and cheeks. Ha 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 ha. The Titan head laughed sinisterly, enduring the terrifying lashes. You can't trap me, you won't let me die, and you won't live either, ha ha ha. He tore apart the sky with mad laughter, wanting to leap again, wanting to break free from the world's constraints. But those void chains instantly bound him again, pressing him firmly onto the earth, continuously burning his head. But he still laughed, angry and resisted. As he said, the more they bound him, the more furious and unwilling he became. Lin quickly rushed to the edge of that crater. His eyes immediately reflected the crazed Titan head, bound in the center by cursed chains. Not only did those void chains bind him, but they also whipped him madly. Is this the reason for his chaos? Lin deeply observed. Is it a curse? If it's a curse, if the curse is the source of this unwillingness and anger. In an instant, Lin suddenly raised his head, his expression freezing. Almost in the next moment, he suddenly leaped down, his expression calm. Tentacles surged out from his shoulders like an exoskeleton, allowing him to swiftly move like a spider, heading rapidly towards the direction of the Titan head. His expression was calm. He moved like an agile cheetah, swiftly weaving through the rising void chains. If it's a curse, if it's because of this that he suffers. He instantly grabbed his own wrist, and beams of glaring light burst from his eyes. Maybe they can. Almost at that moment, Lin leaped up, passing through countless gaps in the chains. In an instant, a dazzling light burst from his hand, enveloping the Titan head's head. In the distance, upon seeing the countless void chains emerging from the surrounding wasteland, the expressions of both the witch god and Little changed dramatically. She almost instantly understood what had happened. It was her husband triggering once again the curse rooted in his soul. Not good. Without a second word, the witch god's head jerked abruptly, her face full of seriousness, as she swiftly flew towards that direction with Little. Little's face turned slightly pale as she said, "Daddy, has it happened again?" Clearly, she had witnessed similar scenes more than once before, especially during her father's chaotic periods, when the endless fury couldn't be restrained, and he repeatedly tried to break free from the world's shackles. Those void chains would appear, ruthlessly suppressing him again in this world. It was the materialization of the curse, and also the shackles imposed on them, binding them for eternity. The witch god's eyes flickered with light, gritting her teeth and saying, "Let's hurry over. This damn fool always acts up at the worst times. I hope that little guy hasn't been affected." Upon hearing those words, Little's face immediately turned pale, and her entire expression became anxious. The face of Lin appeared in her mind, making her immediately uneasy. "Doctor." They swiftly moved forward. Finally, a few minutes later, they crossed the burning wilderness. As soon as they entered, the witch god's head immediately noticed something abnormal. Because every time her husband fell into madness, the curses unleashed were invariably terrifying, often tormenting him to the point of severe injuries before relenting. But for some reason, just after she entered this place not long ago, she suddenly felt that the violent curse inexplicably weakened, although the degree of weakening was not significant. But this had never happened before. She looked surprised, not quite understanding what had happened. Or here, the witch god's head, with Little, rushed to the edge of the crater that had been smashed open. Her gaze became serious. As soon as she saw the scene inside, the witch god's head instantly revealed a shocked expression. In the center of the large crater, the Titan head was still bound by enormous chains, his eyes occasionally confused, occasionally clear. And not far away on the ground, Lin lay in a state of exhaustion. At this moment, his left hand was struggling to climb, dragging the already unconscious Lin, trying to crawl to a safe place. "You arrogant motherfucker. Who did you think you could heroically brush away the curse from this big guy? That's a root-level curse. Too naive. After this, there won't be a 5-ton feast for you. Don't expect to earn my forgiveness." The left hand struggled to drag Lin to a safe area. Little exclaimed, "Oh, it's Doctor's moving left hand." Meanwhile, in the center, the Titan head had become significantly more lucid. Apparently, the weakening of the curse had greatly alleviated the curse that would have taken a long time for him to suppress. "What is this?" The witch god's head looked astonished. 1 hour later, accompanied by a trace of mental power circulating in his mind, the mentally exhausted Lin slowly woke up, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Little's puzzled face 2 stories high. Doctor, you're awake." Before Lin could come to his senses, the system prompt sounded in his ears. Special achievement, obtained when using limited curse ability on extremely high-level curse beings and successfully partially reducing the curse. Lin instantly woke up, then sat up straight, opened his eyes, and said, "How's uncle?" As soon as he finished speaking, a strong voice of concern came from behind him. "I'm fine." Lin turned around. Then, he immediately saw the Titan head not far away, looking at him with a serious expression. His eyes had regained clarity, apparently having escaped from the previous chaos. And, whether it was an illusion or not, Lin could clearly feel that the Titan head now seemed to have a touch of wisdom and dignity that was absent before. This could be sensed from the way he looked at people, no longer the gaze suppressing with anger and malice, but truly like a living being. Humanity. The Titan head stared deeply at him and said, "You weakened. My curse." Because of the curse, it was difficult to restrain his anger, and once the boundless anger was guided out due to some trigger, he would immediately fall into immense madness, because he was tormented by past anger at all times. This made him desperate. But just as the curse surged and almost pushed him into madness, the teenager somehow weakened the intensity of the curse in an instant. Although the degree of weakening was not high, but this instantly increased the proportion of clarity in his consciousness. Lin rubbed his throbbing forehead and calmly said, "I just tried it out, never thought it would actually work. This is another ability. I can temporarily remove curses from the target for 24 hours. But my current strength is too weak to completely remove the curse from you. However, I've weakened it by about 15%. Upon hearing this, the witch god's head instantly showed a trace of shock and astonishment. How is this possible? Because she was the witch god. She understood better than anyone the terrifying nature of the curse that tormented them. That curse could make them immortal but also bind them tightly in this dark world, driving them insane. Even she couldn't completely suppress this curse. Wandering Soul Alley. Lin smiled and extended his hand, waving towards the small family, saying, "Let's stop here. Zio, uncle, aunt, I live at 55 Wandering Soul Alley. If you have time, feel free to come and visit me." Zio said, "But doctor, I can't bear to part with you." Lin reached out and gently patted his head, saying, "You have to be good, Zio. We'll see each other again. I'm your dentist, and you can come anytime when you have time." Of course, Zio couldn't stay with him all the time. Although having a root-level companion provided a sense of security, Lin knew that the appearance of root-level creatures in this dark world would undoubtedly attract a lot of attention and unnecessary trouble. Moreover, Titan and Witch Head would definitely not stay either. Their conditions were special. If they accidentally fell into chaos, Wandering Soul Alley might be leveled. Titan looked deeply at him, saying, "You have to be careful. Yesterday, you boldly led my daughter to eliminate that organization, and you must have attracted a lot of unnecessary attention. But still, if anyone dares to bully you, just give Big Brother a message, and none of them will survive." Lin was immediately moved. Indeed, Uncle's words gave an indescribable sense of security. Finally, did he have a reliable support in this dark world? Lin immediately asked, "But how can I contact you?" "Write a letter." There was a brief silence around. Just as Lin wondered why the air suddenly quieted down, Zio said, "I can't read. If there's no translation, it'll be troublesome." Lin was surprised. But indeed, for root-level creatures, there was simply no reason to learn the language of this dark world, because they had no reason or need to integrate into this world. "What is this?" Witch Head hesitated. Lin smiled slightly, saying, "Vision stones." Vision stone, a mysterious substance that connects visions. After use, one can transmit their consciousness into a vision. Each time you go to a vision, you need a vision stone as a medium. That's right. The informant had mentioned that vision was the fastest way to communicate over distances in this dark world. Simple, efficient, and extremely convenient. A few minutes later, Vision, a huge eyeball, hovered in the pitch-black sky above the square. Its surging gaze was like a massive beam of light, illuminating the entire square. On the square, there were virtual shadows everywhere, and outside the square, it was still a pitch-black area that couldn't be seen clearly. It was already late at night, but on the Vision Square, virtual shadows were still dense. This place corresponded to the vast area in the consciousness world, and there was a large crowd. At this moment, there were still many virtual shadows discussing the footage released by the daytime informant. In other words, those 3 root-level bounty hunters appeared here in our area yesterday. Yeah, you also saw that image, right? It was in the neighboring Wandering Soul Alley. According to reliable information, the headquarters of the Devil Association has indeed been destroyed. I have an acquaintance outside the Devil Association who said he couldn't contact the main brain anymore. He's now very scared, feeling that he could be eaten at any time. I think there will be many dark creatures coming here to investigate recently. Wait a minute, since those 3 root bounty hunters were in our area, do you guys think they might come to Vision too? As soon as this was said, there was silence all around, followed by waves of sarcastic laughter. Don't be ridiculous. Is your brain sick? Vision is the only order in the dark world. How could those truly chaotic existences possibly come here? Yeah, it's simply foolish. I've never heard of a root-level creature appearing in Vision, not before, and definitely not in the future. Exactly. Do you think all root-level creatures have a clear consciousness like us? Most of them are a nameless and bizarre aggregation. How could they come here? If those 3 root bounty hunters really come to Vision, I'll immediately stand on my head and flip 100 times around the square. I'm telling you, even if God comes, I won't stop. Laughter echoed all around, and the previously bustling square was instantly emptied. All the virtual shadows crowded into a corner of the square, looking in fear at the 3 terrifying beings in the center of the square. Who brought them here? Who brought these ghosts here? This is something they never expected. In the square where they were, creatures of origin level actually descended. And damn, it happened 3 at once. And, for the first time, they saw that the supreme will of the realm, due to the descent of these 3 beings, urgently elevated their desolate little place into a big city. Because in the realm, different squares are divided based on the total consciousness of the current area. Level 9 is the lowest level. Also, the place with the least total consciousness. And the descent of these 3 origin level beings directly promoted their remote place. In the center of the square, Lin smiled and opened his arms, saying, Zayek Xiao, uncle and aunt, welcome to the realm. Zayek Xiao widened her eyes in surprise, gazing at the surroundings. Titan's skull looked around warily, then his gaze fell on the giant eye above them, staring at them. He instinctively felt a threat, squinting his eyes and saying, Realm, Supreme Will, I've heard of it, but this is my first time here. Lin's mind stirred, saying, Uncle, do you know something? Titan lifted his head, saying, Are you talking about the Supreme Will? I only know that it's a will that descended on this world a long time ago. Its existence is much older than mine. He sniffed, his gaze flickering, and said dangerously, It's terrifying. Also powerful, and can create such a consciousness domain corresponding to the entire dark world. Its position is above mine. Lin pondered. He had thought about this question before, but it was too distant, and with his current abilities, he couldn't touch it at all. Titan lifted his head, saying, But don't worry, such a will won't pay too much attention to a specific creature. It doesn't care about many origin levels in the dark world. It won't mind. Is it because it's not threatening? The more Lin thought, the more he felt the depth and horror of this world. Lin stopped thinking about those unattainable things. A slight smile appeared on his face, saying, Well, the realm does provide a convenient domain for the creatures of the dark world. By using the realm, no matter where you are, you can contact me and leave a message. Last time, while exploring various functions of the realm, he remembered there was an independent channel that could pull in some people. Found it. In an instant, Lin saw the changes in the rune on his arm. In addition to the realm channel and regional channels, a new independent group appeared. Indeed, the various functions of the realm were indeed rich, making Lin doubt whether the so-called Supreme Will had a connection with the world he lived in. Without hesitation, Lin immediately sent invitations to Zayek Xiao's family. Watching the group, which initially only had him, rapidly expand to 4 people, Lin felt particularly gratified. With this independent small group, it would be much more convenient to contact them in the future. But the channel name needed to be changed. Not bad. In the future, if he encounters reliable and affectionate high-level patients and their families, he can pull them into his independent group. After joining the group, they would all be a family. Doctor brother, are you there? Here. Good, good. Zayek Xiao learned to chat so quickly. That's really talented. Why is it a VIP members group? Because Zayek Xiao is my first VIP customer, so I chose this name. I think this name is more reasonable. Hey, why does Zayek Xiao have a strange title in front? Exiting the group chat, Lin was speechless, rubbing his forehead. He turned to look at Zayek Xiao's parents, who were stubbornly confronting each other with their teeth clenched. He always felt that this group would be very cheerful in the future. Zayek Xiao said, Very interesting. Doctor, do you need a dark stone every time you come in here? Lin smiled, saying, Yes. Zayek Xiao curiously asked, What if it runs out? Lin gently patted her head, saying, It's simple. Zayek Xiao, you just need to find a passing creature and kindly ask them for a realm stone. They will give it to you. Xiaoxiao exclaimed. Really? Will they really be so friendly? Lin raised his thumb, smiling. Definitely. Got it. Thank you, doctor. Ghost Lane. Bloodsaw Apothecary. Lin, exhausted, returned to his attic and collapsed onto the bed, closing his eyes. Finally back. So much had happened in a single day, and even the experiences of this day could match up to his monotonous life of the past 2 years. He had bid farewell to Xiaoxiao and her parents, but with the realm, future contact would be easier. Sleep, rest for a while, then quickly change jobs. Too much experience has accumulated. Lin closed his eyes, lying on the bed, and soon entered the dreamland. Early morning. In the dark fog of Ghost Lane, 2 tall figures slowly appeared. One was a muscled man covered in stitched-up scars, looking hideous. The other was a 3-meter-tall noblewoman wearing a gorgeous gown. Are you sure those 3 origin bounty hunters are gone? Bloodsaw asked with some concern. The puppet lady stood dignified, arms crossed, glancing at him and said, I've been observing. They left a few hours ago, but I really didn't expect you, a stitched-up creature, to actually bring out such an amazing disciple. Bloodsaw frowned, holding a razor. It's not my concern. I don't know how he got acquainted with that level of existence. It's only been a few days since he left the shop. The puppet lady raised her head, looking at the dilapidated shop door in the distance. Here we are, she said firmly, gripping her hands. Such an excellent young man. If he stayed in this remote place, it would be a great loss. Regardless, they should make contact first, leave a good impression, and then gradually introduce their daughters to this handsome young man. Soon, they arrived at the door of Bloodsaw Apothecary. Though indirectly, the puppet lady raised an eyebrow. Bloodsaw chuckled. No, my disciple is a very dedicated person. I told him to look after the shop before I left, and he will definitely take care of it meticulously. If we go in without saying hello, he might attack us directly. Thinking about this, he felt relieved. After all, this was the dark world. And more importantly, his disciple had gained his respect in the past few days. If the bounty hunter had really left him some powerful items, going in without notice might lead to serious injuries. Saying that, he happily walked to the door and knocked 3 times, shouting towards the attic, Disciple, your teacher is back. Open the door. Attic. Lin, who was sleeping soundly, reflexively opened his eyes, sitting up straight like a zombie. Teacher's voice. He was startled. He grabbed the bone-cutting knife and revolver from beside his bed. The next moment, Bloodsaw's shout came from downstairs again. Lin, open the door. Your teacher is back. I need to rest. Got it. Lin quickly shouted, I'm coming, please wait. I really missed you, teacher. Without saying a word, Lin quickly put on his clothes, grabbed the bone-cutting knife, and hurried down the stairs. Outside the front door, Bloodsaw smiled slightly, a hint of satisfaction on his ugly face. Did you hear that? How considerate, how affectionate. He's my favorite disciple that I've adopted in recent years. We treat each other like father and son despite being master and disciple, and our relationship is deep. The puppet lady also had a radiant smile. Yes, indeed. He seems to be a very nice young man. Bloodsaw walked to the door, feeling extremely pleased. He already felt the breath of his disciple approaching rapidly. In his mind, he instantly pictured the scene of his obedient disciple looking at him with tears in his eyes after opening the door. A reunion after a long separation. A bone-cutting knife suddenly stabbed through the door, poking Bloodsaw. At the same time, Lin's shout came from the other side. You fooled me the day before yesterday, and now you're pretending to be my teacher again. Should I stab you a few more times? 3 more stabs. Bloodsaw stared with wide eyes, tremblingly reaching out. Hi, I'm really your teacher. Another stab. Puppet lady couldn't speak. Is this your Bloodsaw Apothecary's welcome ceremony? Something's not right. This is too hardcore. No, it seems like his disciple mistook him. Wait a minute. The puppet lady urgently reached out. But in the next moment, a long hair instantly spread out from that gap, then precisely looped around Bloodsaw's head. It was like someone throwing a loop, accurately catching a giggling loli far away on the 2nd floor. Instant tightening. Puff. Bloodsaw was instantly pulled onto the door, struggling desperately on the door, grabbing the door and struggling hard. I can't breathe. Stop. The puppet lady finally became urgent, banging on the door forcefully, and the door, along with the blood-spraying Bloodsaw, fell down. He really is her teacher. In the hall, Lin, holding the vengeful spirit hair that was already tied to the beam, looked stunned, watching his teacher, who was stabbed multiple times, spraying blood and struggling for his life. Ding. Congratulations to the host for triggering the achievement, Deceiving Teacher, and Destroying Ancestry. You have gained basic experience, 200. An evil achievement, triggered in any situation, has a chance to be obtained when stabbing your own teacher, and causing severe bleeding. This indicates that you have taken a solid step toward the chaotic and evil camp, and you have gained permanent enhancements. Strength +3, agility +2, happiness +5. After about 10 minutes, in the backyard operating table, the puppet lady stood there with a painful expression, pacing back and forth. She turned her head, looking at the blood-spurting bloodsaw lying on the operating table, and then at Lin. "Can you save him?" the puppet lady asked anxiously. Lin held a needle seriously, saying, "No big deal, my teacher's vitality is extremely tenacious. 6 stabs are nothing to him, not to mention, I am his disciple who has inherited his superb medical skills." Ding! A bright light flashed on the needle. Lin's expression was calm, eager to reach out. Ding! Bloodsaw's sanity -1. "Wait a minute." Bloodsaw, who was spouting blood, weakly reached out, pointing to the cabinet. "Stop the bleeding first, then anesthetize, then sew it, step by step. Don't skip." Lin shook, saying, "Yes, teacher." Lin immediately turned and came to the counter, rummaging through it, and then found several bottles of hemostatic and anesthetic drugs. Calmly taking out a syringe, he glanced at the major artery of his teacher. "Stop." Bloodsaw weakly reached out, preventing him when Lin was about to insert the needle. "Inject into the vein. Inject into the vein. Inject into the vein. I've said it so many times. Don't just see which blood vessel is thick and insert it there. Too thick is not good either." Lin trembled and said, "I'm sorry, teacher. I still need to deepen my learning." Quickly administering a shot to his teacher, applying anesthesia, and stopping the bleeding, Lin squinted his eyes and picked up the sharp needle again. Ding! A flash of light passed. "Teacher, I'm done," Lin exclaimed. "Do you know how to stitch?" Bloodsaw trembled. Lin, holding the needle seriously, said, "Yes, teacher. Every time you stitch someone's wounds, I observe very carefully." Bloodsaw sighed in relief. "That's good." And the anesthesia had already been administered. It shouldn't hurt much. After all, having been around him for 2 years, Lin had learned some real skills. "Let's begin then." "What the heck? What's going on? Why does it still hurt like hell after anesthesia? Does this guy have some passive skill that automatically causes pain to others, even after so much anesthesia can't suppress it? This is unacceptable. In the future, when it's the first time with a girl, it will definitely hurt her to death." Sewing experience +1. After about 10 minutes, Lin calmly took out scissors and carefully cut off the thread from his teacher's stomach, patting the beautiful bow on top. Gently sprinkling a composite drug on it, the task was successfully completed. "Teacher, the surgery was very successful." Lin earnestly raised his thumb and said, "Inside and outside, as well as the back, everything that should be stitched has been stitched, and I guarantee there are no mistakes." Bloodsaw had already foamed at the mouth and fainted. "Teacher," Lin exclaimed in shock. Bloodsaw, with a pale face, leaned against the operating table, looking at the bandage on his stomach. "Lin, you didn't leave anything in your teacher's belly, did you? Like scissors, a ball of yarn, a couple of needles, gloves, or your single eyeglass?" "I guarantee not, teacher." Learning from mistakes, this apprentice has long since corrected this habit. Bloodsaw sighed in relief and pulled out a metal detector from his pocket. He carefully scanned his stomach for a while. After not hearing any beeping sound, he truly relaxed. The puppet lady looked at this absurd scene in astonishment. It always felt like this young man wasn't as normal as she thought. Bloodsaw exhaled and patted Lin's shoulder, his face showing a gratified expression. "Not bad. Although you stabbed your teacher several times, making me really want to give you a few slaps, being so decisive in stabbing without knowing who's outside. That's quite the style of your teacher's younger days. The pupil surpasses the master." He felt relieved. Lin earnestly listened to his teacher's advice and said, "I dare not forget the teacher's teachings. Teacher said that in the middle of the night, no matter if it's a guest or not, stab first and assess the situation later." Is this a joke? What kind of teaching is this? She looked at these two earnest fellows, looking at Bloodsaw, who was stabbed once but now looked very content, and Lin, who quickly took out a pen, seriously recorded Bloodsaw's words. She always felt that there was some kind of wicked mentorship between them. "Bloodsaw, you wooden-headed guy, did you forget something important? Weren't you planning to question him? Also, you believe whatever he says, don't you? Haven't you seen during the day when your disciple was riding a primal creature all over the place? He clearly hasn't been afraid." He was obviously laughing happily. "Disciple, what about those primal hunters? The news has already spread in the area." Bloodsaw wiped his red eyes and asked. Lin said, "Teacher, you already knew about it. That was the night after you left. A guest who came to the shop for a toothache. Such a huge head. Almost scared your disciple. Shit himself." Wiping away tears, Lin continued, "But thanks to your disciple's quick thinking, Improvisation. I cured the toothache for that primal level creature. Otherwise, your disciple would really have cracked. Teacher, what about you? That day you said you were going out, so how did you end up involved with the Demon Hunter Association? The Bloodsaw smiled bitterly and said, it's a disaster caused by me. You probably don't know, right? I used to be an elder of the Demon Hunter Association. The Bloodsaw raised his head and said, a few days ago, I suddenly received an invitation from an old friend, saying that a research I had always been interested in had made significant progress recently. So, they wanted to invite me to the Hanging Tower for a gathering. I didn't think much about it. Although I haven't been to the Hanging Tower in 10 years, I would never have thought that what awaited me wasn't research and discussion but a coup, including him. Back then, he, along with other retired elders who had followed the old chairman in establishing the Demon Hunter Association, were all invited to the Hanging Tower, and it was there that the current association president, the Heart-Eating Demon, announced the restart of the Colossus Project. The Colossus Project. Lin hesitated, his heart stirring. Yes, the Bloodsaw sighed with a deep voice. Since the Demon Hunter Association is no more, there's no harm in telling you. After we discovered the remains of a fallen technological civilization a few hundred years ago, we analyzed various technologies and knowledge within it. All the knowledge pointed to the colossal weapon that civilization created 3,000 years ago. But after subsequent research and analysis, both the President and I vaguely sensed that the shattered Colossus, which fell into our world, might possess a terrifying power surpassing the root level. And what's even more frightening is that the Colossus is an artificial creation, a terrifying weapon composed of both machinery and flesh. Can you imagine what that means for an organization deeply involved in machinery and modification? Len's gaze deepened. Fanaticism. Yes, this is like a group of lowly enthusiasts who have been confined in a pitch-black cage with only male creatures around suddenly seeing a cute little lowly appear in front of them one day. The excitement and wildness are something ordinary people can't comprehend. We searched for fragments of the Colossus throughout the world and fervently wanted to reconstruct it. This lasted for hundreds of years. Lin's mind moved slightly, and he asked, why was it postponed later? Because we deciphered something. The war. A vast war that extended across countless worlds and civilizations. At that node 3,000 years ago, it broke out, and the technological civilization that possessed the Colossus, which could be considered one of the peak civilizations in countless worlds at that time, even comparable to gods with the support of Colossus technology, still failed. The entire civilization was destroyed, and the prideful Colossus made of flesh and machinery shattered and fell into this dark world. Curse. We have a strong premonition. If we really manage to bring the Colossus back into the world, some terrible curse will be triggered. Like there's some existence that won't allow the Colossus to reappear. 3,000 years ago. Is it again 3,000 years ago? Lin pondered upon hearing these words. Bloodsaw closed his eyes and said, it's precisely because of that strong premonition that we temporarily put aside the colossal plan and separated the valuable colossal fragments we collected among us elders. Lin immediately thought of a certain creature in the backyard and exclaimed, little treasure. Bloodsaw was surprised, you actually know. Without saying a word, Lin quickly got up and rushed to the backyard. Then the sound of the cellar door being pried open resounded, followed by angry hissing. The next moment, to the astonishment of Bloodsaw and the puppet lady, Lin came running with a struggling, angry giant tongue in his arms, saying firmly, well, I've guessed it. Because the only valuable thing in our pharmacy is this guy. Hiss, hiss. When the bloody puppet came before, little treasure helped me a lot. We've become quite close. Hiss, hiss. Bloodsaw nodded, saying, yes, you guessed it right. It's a component of the colossal I brought back from the association that year. Don't be fooled by its appearance as just a tongue. It has a strong self-awareness and is the most mischievous among the components we found that year. Lin, holding little treasure in confusion, asked, teacher, do you mean that each component differentiated from the colossal has its own independent consciousness? Bloodsaw fell silent for a moment at Lin's words. That's right, it's very strange, but in this dark world, it's not something entirely new. Teacher, what are your plans now? The Mage Association has been destroyed, and you should continue to stay here with your disciples, right? I did think about settling down for a few days, but this time I might not stay here for long. Lin was surprised. Bloodsaw smiled bitterly and said, the Mage Association has been annihilated. But many research results within the association were the painstaking efforts of us elders. I cannot allow those achievements to leak out just because the association is gone. Although the Hanging Tower is destroyed, the major branches of the association in the dark world still exist. And not long ago, he received information that Before the hanging tower was destroyed, the heart-devouring demon had transferred most of the association's data to several secret bases. Bloodsaw stood up, patted Lin's shoulder, and said seriously, I indeed misjudged you before. From your experiences in these days, it's clear that you have the ability and qualifications to stand on your own. Rather than following by your teacher's side for a lifetime, you should forge your own path. Rest assured, the teacher will always be the towering man standing behind you, and I believe that in the peaks of this dark world, you will surely have your place. Lin stared at the serious and gentle expression on his teacher's face. For a moment, Lin felt an indescribable warmth. Yes, 2 years, falling into such a sunless world. Terrifying, bizarre, absurd. Beliefs shattered time and time again, and cognition challenged repeatedly. If not for the shelter of his burly teacher time and time again, allowing him to adapt, change, and understand in this darkness, he would probably have died on the second day of crossing. Thinking about the past 2 years, Lin finally smiled and closed his eyes. Yes, finally got the teacher's approval. He smiled, opened his eyes, and reached out to Bloodsaw with a determined smile, saying, Rest assured, teacher. Although I may not have much talent, I promise you that I will make Bloodsaw Pharmacy the best pharmacy in this dark world. Seeing the confident and youthful smile on Lin's face and his energetic declaration, the puppet lady stared blankly, feeling her heart beating irregularly. Indeed, youth is admirable. Although he seemed abnormal before, suddenly becoming normal, he exuded an indescribable charm and vitality. Even an old woman like herself couldn't help but want to lure him into a dark room and pamper him. Her mind immediately conjured up scenes of tender, juicy, and aged beef. The puppet lady quickly shook her head, getting rid of the bizarre thoughts in her mind. A serious face. No, this is going too far. Such a vibrant young man, if not left for her daughters, would be unfair. She immediately formulated a plan in her mind. Time passed quickly. After the conversation, they temporarily settled here. Bloodsaw and Lin returned to their respective rooms. Soon, the thunderous snoring echoed from Bloodsaw's room, while the puppet lady in the adjacent guest room couldn't sleep. Wearing her oversized robe, holding her surging chest, she paced back and forth in the guest room, lost in thought. Boom, boom, boom. 3 knocks on the door. Lin, lying on the bed with his eyes closed, instantly sat up straight like a zombie. Lin, are you there? It's your aunt. Lin was startled. Aunt? Is it the old lover of his teacher? It's so late. What is she doing here? Immediately, he quickly got out of bed and walked to the front door, hesitating as he looked outside through a small hole in the door panel. Instantly, a surge of waves reflected in Lin's pupils. Swish, swish. Wide-eyed, Lin opened the door and said, Aunt, it's so late. Is there something you need? The puppet lady, with a smile on her face, stood in front of Lin with her 3-meter-tall figure, making Lin appear especially petite. She was about to speak when she noticed 2 lines of nosebleed flowing from Lin's nose, and asked in confusion, Lin, are you bleeding from your nose? Lin wiped away the nosebleed and rubbed his temples, calmly saying, It's nothing. I've been feeling a bit feverish lately. A little rest will fix it. The puppet lady didn't think much of it and smiled, glancing up and down at Lin with a playful look, sensing his vibrant and handsome appearance. However, the puppet lady did not forget the purpose of her visit. Yes, the puppet lady's face showed a hint of discomfort. She covered her forehead and looked somewhat weak, saying, I've been busy outside these days, especially after helping your teacher deal with those puppets from the Mage Association. My energy hasn't recovered, and my whole body is sore. I've been feeling weak, and it's hard to sleep at night. I don't know what's wrong, so I thought of asking you to check on Aunt. Click. After the puppet lady came in, Lin immediately closed the door. As soon as he turned around, he saw the puppet lady stretching in a big yawn, making strange sounds of satisfaction. The surging waves seemed to surge like a tide. Lin was shocked. Damn, Aunt, take it easy. Do you know that revealing your figure so casually in front of a young man can cause a considerable psychological impact on him? But Lin, being a doctor, quickly regained his composure. He quickly put on his white coat, pulled out a chair, and sat opposite the puppet lady, calmly taking out paper and pen, asking, Aunt, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Can you tell me specifically? The puppet lady, with a sly smile, raised her eyebrows and said, Not sure. I've been feeling tired, sore back, muscle pain, all over pain. And, I don't know why, I just feel powerless. Lin pondered, recording, Have you been overworking? Haven't had enough rest and adjustment these days. The puppet lady adjusted her sleepwear collar, weakly saying, I'm not sure. The sleep quality has been good, but I just can't seem to exert any strength. She seemed to tug at her collar, catching Lin off guard. Lin quickly regained his composure. After a moment of contemplation, he asked, "And, let me check your pulse. Let's see what's going on." The puppet lady, with a smile, held her forehead and said, "That would be great." Saying that, she raised her sleeves, extending her hand weakly. She secretly observed Lin's reaction. Of course, she didn't really have any illness. She just wanted to use this as an excuse to connect her daughters with him. He probably wouldn't be able to diagnose anything. And later, she could easily have him prescribe some blood-activating and stasis-dispelling medicine, or maybe give her a massage, or something. And then, she'd give him a proper thank you gift. It was perfectly reasonable. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.